And away we go. So, we are beginning today with the conquest of the Americas. You'll notice in your chapter, guys, that one of our words was Christopher Columbus, but the fact is we already had him, so and you should be fine. So, I'm going to go ahead and skip over these other terms to know because I forgot those were in there. But we'll get to that here in a minute. So to start off, as we've established, Christopher Columbus is this guy who begins what we call the Age of Discovery for the Spanish by going essentially a different direction than everybody else and running into this giant landmass where he encounters some people. Now, he mistakenly identifies them as Indian, just a group of people that he had never been encountered before, somewhere in the islands of East Indies. So, it's Indians. And the first relationships between him and the Indians, how does it go? They have good relations? Actually, yeah, he does. Things go pretty well. Does some trading, gets some information. They give him some gifts, he gives them some gifts, and off they go. You see, one of the things I think that's very interesting of late is it seems there's been a lot of hatred towards Christopher Columbus lately. For instance, I've heard people come saying, well, he was a slave trader. No, he wasn't. Not ever did he do that. He was an explorer. He did several things, but trading slaves is not really his bag. He gets a lot of bad reputation for the acts of other people. This is where we start getting into these guys right over here, conquistadors. You guys know what that word means, conquistador? What does it mean? Yeah, they kind of act as explorers. I mean, the term in Spanish means conquer. But that means a lot of different things. They acted as explorers, they acted as sailors, they acted as soldiers. Whatever it is they had to do to achieve their goal. And their goal is in the name. They're there to take stuff over. That is because the Taino, among other peoples, have something very, very interesting to them, and that is, of course, this. We should probably correct those. So the relation began pretty well. As we said, once that the Spanish discover gold, everything else is off. Why are they so interested in gold? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, because gold is like money.
Yeah, it is money, exactly right. A lot of people like to say, well, it's sort of like money. No, it literally is money. So finding a gold mine is like finding a money tree, you know? And the thing is gold is also the most expensive money. Gold coins are worth a significant amount of labor. Most people would never experience a gold coin in their hands. It's just too much money. The equivalent in the 1790s of a gold coin in the United States was about $25, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but consider this. The average pay for somebody was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20 cents a week, something like that. So, I mean, we're talking 25 bucks. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of a year's amount of money all at once. So it's a significant amount of money. So whenever we say that some of these treasure ships are going to come out of the Spanish Main are going to be carrying something like 12,000 gold coins on them, is pretty significant. The silver is also incredibly important. The silver mines that come out of Mexico is going to run the economy of Europe, essentially. There's going to be so much money coming out of these colonies that it literally is going to change the way people look at money and how it works. So we're going to have some pretty significant changes going on because of this. So what happens? Well, once the explorers get out of their way and start going looking for other things, Then the conquistadors come, and basically they enslave the people. So the natives are enslaved first. Well, what happens is they are treated very harshly. They are worked literally to death. Think about how hard you would have to work to die from it. And keep in mind, mining is a really hard job, especially back then, because they don't have like a lot of modern technologies you need, for instance, to pump out toxic gases to bring fresh air down to the mines. It's constantly wet. You're in danger of cave-ins. You're hunched over with a shovel digging for hours at a time. It's a really, really hard job. And these guys are also facing one of the biggest things, one of the most difficult, deadly things that the Europeans are bringing with them, and that is, of course, diseases. Does anyone know what disease was the biggest, the most deadliest, the thing that's killing more people in the world than any other at this time? They're not big pox. They're smallpox. That's right. Smallpox is the #1 deadly disease. The Europeans had sort of built up an immunity. Not that they were totally immune to it, but they had some defense. The natives had none whatsoever. So this meant that the natives were experiencing huge amount of disease and dying off. Well, this faced another problem. Mining is incredibly labor intensive. We need a lot of people doing it if we're going to make a profit. So if we have all these natives dying out, guess where they're going to go to find more labor cheap? Let's look at the map for just a second. We'll notice that the Caribbean is right here between the Tropic of Cancer and the equator, yes? Let's keep going this direction. Where do we go? There you go. You guys have heard of the transatlantic slave trade? This is where it starts. We have folks from Europe bringing goods that the Africans want, namely guns and tobacco and refined products. We're going to trade for slaves across the Atlantic, where we trade the slaves for raw materials, things like sugar cane and rum and stuff like that. Well, less rum and more sugar cane, I suppose. A little bit that, but also things like gold and tobacco. We're going to bring that and trade it in Europe and continue the cycle back and forth, making tons and tons of money doing it. So this is how the whole thing begins. There's going to be a very strict hierarchy in colonial life once we settle these areas. We'll talk a little bit more of that later. But suffice it to say, the situation's going to be pretty quick, pretty bad. So this is an interesting fact. Hernando Cortez only had 600 men on his campaign. That in one gun, in terms of gun, I mean cannon. And then various small arms, muskets and pikes and swords and that sort of thing. So how is it exactly that he's going to not only win a battle against the Aztec, he's going to conquer their entire civilization, I might add, of hundreds of thousands? Well, last year in geography, we summed it up with 3 words. Do you guys know what that is? Guns, germs, and steel. But there's really 4, to be honest. Because we can kind of roll steel and guns into one, which is military technology. Another major one has to do with the natives themselves. Politically, they were divided. When we say that he defeated the Aztec, we're only really talking about an empire. The Aztec Empire was made up of multiple different ethnicities, many of which actually hated the Aztec. For example, he runs into this young lady who is going to act as an interpreter and a guide for him as he goes about his conquest, and she is hoping that by doing so, he will basically destabilize the Aztec enough, because it's debatable whether she thought he could take on the Aztec, but enough that where her own people could go free. Her name was Malinche. So the Aztec are going to try, the Spanish are going to try to destabilize the region, and she's hoping to reap the benefit of that. Sort of that an enemy of my enemy is my friend. So that's one issue right there. If the natives had all divided or worked together to fight against the Europeans wouldn't have stood a chance. In 1521, Tenochtitlan, which was the capital of the Aztec, was defeated by Cortez. And what's interesting is Cortez not only took the city, but then he destroyed it, he burned everything to the ground, and ended up damming up the lake that it was built on so that there was no sign that the city had ever been there, and then built another city on top of it. And that city still stands today. Does anyone know what the name of that city is? Not Machu Picchu. I'll give you a hint. The Aztec never called themselves the Aztec. Their name for themselves were the Mexica. You know how you spell Mexica? M-E-X-I-C-A. So which city is on the site of the Mexica capital? Say it out loud, I just heard it. Somebody knows it and won't say it. Yeah. Mexico City, right. Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. In fact, if you go there, you will see that they have some leftovers of Tenochtitlan, and throughout Mexico they've got tons of things left over from the Aztec period. This shows a map of the Aztec Empire around the year 1519. One of the things you'll see again is right here we have the core states, the Aztec state, made up of the Aztec tribe, if you will, and then all these other tributary states and allied states that make up the whole of their empire. So again, it's not really so much like it's one delicious piece of candy as much as it's like a jawbreaker made of layers, which you should not microwave according to Mythbusters. This is a drawing that was done showing the Aztec emperor, if you will, whose name was Moctezuma, meeting with Hernan Cortez and Malinche. Which again, I think is kind of funny because one of the biggest problems we have with art, guys, is drawing a difference between men and women. You know, it's easy when you have a photograph, but if you're drawing something, like how do you draw the difference between a guy and a girl? It's kind of hard, isn't it? I mean, like some people like, if you're drawing stick figures, they'll just put long hair in. Don't guys have long hair? What about short-haired girls? You know, it's not very easy. That's why in so many caricatures, they have like a little bow that signifies a girl and things like that. Look at Pac, you know. That's kind of how they go down. And like this, for instance, Malinche, it's a she. And people are always like, does she have a beard? That's tattooed. That was actually not terribly uncommon. But again, this is kind of an interesting thing because there's a lot of stories about Cortez meeting the Aztec. For instance, there's this legend that Cortez was thought to be a god because there was this Aztec legend that said that one day a chief god, Quetzalcoatl, would come back to the Aztec people and he would appear in the guise of a pale-faced foreigner riding upon the beast of another world. Well, that would make sense because, of course, Cortez is foreign and he's much paler skinned compared to the Native Americans. But the other thing, what about the beast of another world? Well, what did they not have in the New World before the Spanish arrived? Horses, absolutely. So that kind of makes sense. And he did actually do that. He did use that legend to his benefit. But did people actually believe he was a god? Not so much. Some maybe did. Some others not so much. Montezuma did, for one. He was actually quite suspicious of Cortez and didn't want to let him into the city, but was kind of persuaded to do so by others. And then whenever they want to get rid of Cortez, he faces some opposition there. He's got really a tough battle on his hands, and he ends up failing, and they kill him for it. Like, some people kill him because he fails. So like, dude can't help but for losing. But this is actually what Tenochtitlan would have looked like, according to some historians. And again, we knew it was a floating city, so it was built on Lake Texcoco. That's pretty cool. For one thing, think of the technology it would take to make a floating city. You know, it's actually really a series of islands that are connected with rafts and things like that. But how do you farm on top of a lake? Well, they did. And how they did it's kind of interesting. Do you guys know where the best, richest soil you can find is? It's the bottom of the lake. So what you do is you build a basket, a big basket, you bring up the soil, and you put it in the baskets, and you farm on those, and they're floating in the water, and that keeps the soil constantly with the nice amount of water that you need. That's hydroponic farming is what that is. That's an advanced style of farming that we just rediscovered in the 20th century. So they had pretty cool stuff. We'll get to some more of their advances later, but check this out. This is a statue that's in Mexico City, showing the supposed founding of the city. And again, the story goes that the gods said, you need to go, you need to find this new promised land, the city that you can develop on. And so they did. They followed this area of the desert looking for signs, and this eagle landed on a cactus and was carrying a serpent. And this was seen as a sign from the gods that this is where we should build the city. And then they, of course, used the latex cocoa. They built the dams and everything necessary to flood this area, and they built their city on it. So with rock and roll. They didn't build it with rock and roll. I thought that was funny. Never mind. Anyways, South America. So Francisco Pizarro, he's one of the other most famous of the conquistadors because, again, it's due to his invasion, if you will, that South America and the north, the Inca, are defeated. And again, we have another situation where you have a fairly advanced civilization, although he kind of took advantage of the political system. You see, what was going on at the time was the emperor of the Inca, Atahualpa, had just gotten done fighting a civil war. A civil war with his brother over control of the throne. And he takes advantage of that by basically kidnapping Atahualpa and then issues a ransom. You guys know what ransom means? Give us money or we kill. Pretty simple. Now let's say that we were to capture, like let's say we grab Hank, yeah, we kidnap him, and we're going to hold him for ransom. How much money do you think we can get for him? $5. Oh. 10 bucks. There you go. In all seriousness, if you kidnap somebody, you can probably get a couple $100,000. Not that I'm saying anyone should go kidnapping as a career choice. It generally doesn't end very well. I mean, have you seen the movie Taken? Liam Neeson will find you. No one wants that. Unless he's Aslan, then he has to find you. Anyway, sorry, that was all. Yeah, Liam Neeson. I mean, wait, no, not Liam Neeson. But back to the whole thing is, $200,000. That's a pretty good chunk of change. That's just for your average Joe Schmo. How much money do you get for a king? Lots of money. That's the term king's ransom. Here's what happens. Pizarro says, I want a large room filled with gold. Okay? Now let's imagine for a second. Is this room large, would you say? Let's say a medium-ish room. Okay? I want a medium-ish room filled with gold. Alright? Now imagine that back, two fronts, top to bottom, filled with gold bricks.
Oh my.
That's a lot of money, yes? If I were to fill that cabinet back there, 3 gold bars to each shelf, say about that big, it's going to equal about $2 to $3 million. Yes. I know this because I saw on TV this one time talking about people who do gold exchanges and things like that. They have this huge vault, like as big as this room, like steel, 3/4 kind, and like a little shelf that big in the back. So yeah, we got about $2 to $3 million worth of gold. I'm like, are you serious? That's good lord, you know? That's a lot of money. I mean, think about it. Like this little ring, you know, this isn't gold. It's a flat clay. This little thing in gold would probably be something like $600, like that, and it weighs nothing, you know. So we're talking about a lot of money. So they pay it, and he kills Atahualpa anyways, burns the city to the ground, and proceeds to conquer everything. What's that? A couple of reasons. One, the most important, psychological warfare. Think of it this way. The only reason anybody ever loses a war is because they surrender.
I mean, I think that seems obvious because it's not like you're playing for rules. Like you reach home first, Yahtzee. It's not quite like that before. It's two different games. Sorry about that. But what it does come down to is if we can make somebody surrender. And the best way of doing that is make them surrender without actually having to fight. Case in point, what the Mongols used to do. They would ride up to a town, they'd roll up, and they'd say, "We are the Mongols. We have this vast, amazing empire. You can be a part of it for the low, low price of this amount of money. If you do not pay it, we will kill everything in your town. Every man, every woman, every child, every mouse, every dog, every cat. Everything will be dead. If you join us, we will leave you alone and all will be well." What is your answer? Now let's say this town says, we'll take our chances. We'll fight it out. Very well. They will then surround your town with a wall that they build, and then they will kill everybody in it. Like they just said, kill every living thing in it. Then they'll leave, come back 3 days later, in case anybody survived and was hiding, they come out of hiding, they kill them too, and basically wipe it off the face of the map as if it never existed. So what happens when they come to the second town? They have the doors open, say, "Come on in, we've got all your money piled up in nice baskets for you. Also, we made you this pie. Please don't hurt us," because it was effective. That is how they would control people. This is the same sort of strategy. Burn their capital. It demoralizes them, makes them not want to fight as much. Of course, that can turn around and bite you in the backside, too, because you could also make them really, really mad where they're going to resist no matter what. But there's a few other factors playing in these types of combats that we're going to get to here in just a second. Namely, we have the disease, we have these weapons, which really scare the hell out of people. Because the fact is, if you're used to fighting people with swords and shields, and bows and arrows, you can see what's doing the damage. You can't see a bullet. Not really. So when you fire that bullet, it's gonna. And the thing is, the guns aren't just they are loud, kaboom! And this giant fireball erupts out the front, smoke and everything. You're getting stories of people coming back, and the Aztec are saying, "They've got dragons! These guys are carrying dragons!"
Dragons!
It's terrifying. And people just and you don't even have to fight them because this disease is working to kill people as well. So it's like, oh my God, this is the end of the world! They literally thought it was the end of days, that it was just pack your bags and go home because it's done. We're done. That's all right.
You won't be able to look at that dragon again the same way.
I will. I love dragons.
You love dragons. Actually, no. True story. You can actually go to Germany and ride a Falcor. Anybody knows that? It's no big deal. So this is an interesting little picture here. This is showing our guy Pizarro, and he is capturing Atahualpa. He looks very sad about it. Actually, I think I just drew a mustache. He was very sad about it. This is very much kind of like a neoclassical style of drawing. Also, it's very much into the kind of Greek tragedies. So you got these people that are literally swooning. They're so upset. Why are they topless? What's up with that? Well, again, it goes back to it's hard to draw female forms. It's a true story. First of all, think about where they're living. This is the Inca. The Inca are in the Andes. Is it very warm in the Andes? So odds are good you're not wearing a grass skirt hopping around in the mountains. We already saw what Valencia looked like to not dress like this. This is a Romanesque statuesque thing, this beauty of the human body. It's not shameful, it's beautiful, but also because it's really hard to draw females. So that's who they are. Seriously. I saw this so often in paintings, and my wife actually took art history as a major. So I was like, why is it that always topless? And she explained, that's why. I was like, oh, that actually makes some kind of crazy sense. That's why. This is dummy stuff. It's kind of crazy and it's shenanigans. Alright, so advanced aspects of civilization. So what did they have? Well, first of all, they had mathematics. They had an understanding of geometry. Guys, geometry is kind of a big deal. That comes out of the Enlightenment in Europe, which we haven't quite gotten to yet. But geometry plays a lot of roles in a lot of different things. Everything from how you are going to build your buildings to how you are going to design furniture, how you fight with a sword can be used in geometry. We'll actually practice that a little bit on Thursday and show you guys how this all applies. But there was a lot of aspects to it. They were apt historians. They knew much more about their history than we knew about ours in a lot of cases. And they also had an understanding of astrology. A lot of their ceremonial buildings, these pyramids, were built in line with celestial bodies. So that's kind of a big deal.
So, in addition, their faith was polytheistic, which means what? Many gods, yes. And one of the things you have to understand about their faith in particular is that it was an agricultural-based society. Now, why that matters? In these types of religions that are sort of animist, the earliest peoples are hunter-gatherers, so they're moving along with big herds of animals, they're eating them for meat, things like that. And religion tended to revolve around that animal giving up their body so that others can live. So you'll find like a lot of like Native American traditions, for instance, with hunting rituals, tend to involve thanking the animal for dying so that you could eat, things like that. Well, whenever we move to agriculture, the sacrifice is of the plants, essentially, the seeds. It was seen as almost like cutting the head off the seeds. And there's many stories about like, someone, for instance, losing their head or something like that, and that growing into plants. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But the basis of the faith comes from that. So this idea of sacrifice is already into the faith of the Aztecs. So when it involves human sacrifice, what's going to happen is people are going to give of themselves in order to try to gain a benefit, usually in the form of rain. See, generally speaking, prayers were accompanied with an aspect of human sacrifice. Now let's analyze what that means. Does that mean they killed somebody every time that they wanted to pray? No. Human sacrifice was usually done by a priest, and usually it was something to the effect of like cutting off some hair and burning. I'm sure it smelled delicious, but it was literally giving up something of the flesh. Fasting is kind of a form of human sacrifice in a way. So it was tended to be rather mild. On extreme cases, though, like let's say there's a drought, people are starving, they would sacrifice humans by cutting out their heart. Now, the thing with this is often not Aztec. And the thing with a tribal society like theirs is they didn't see people who weren't Aztec as being fully human, so this was acceptable. It would be like sacrificing a cow or something like that. In addition, if an Aztec was sacrificed, it was seen as an honor. And this is kind of hard for some of us to kind of wrap our heads around sometimes, I think. It's like, but that's crazy. You're going to die, but at the same time, think of it this way. They saw it as reality. Their gods were mad, and the only way to please them and thus get rain and thus save everybody's life was for somebody to give up their life. So this was seen as, you know what, I'm going to lay down my life so my family can live. And I think many of us could understand that, the desire to sacrifice ourselves so that our family can survive. A lot of soldiers in the U.S. do that because they see it as them giving up something because of what they believe. So, I mean, this is part of the same ideology in a way. So I don't want us to think that the Aztec are constantly killing people all the time, because that really is something Cortez does. And you'll come across when you read that letter that he was purposely exaggerating. You guys know why he was exaggerating so much? Because odds are good, like maybe like 100 people were sacrificed on this one event he's talking about. He says 10,000. First of all, 10,000 people sacrificed in a day? I don't think I could do that if I was lighting matches on fire. 10,000 is a lot. Much less the whole ritual. I mean, gosh, did you have time for a nap or a snack during that 24-hour period? I mean, that's pretty hardcore. So odds are good he was exaggerating. Why? Well, he is trying to conquer a region. And people would not be okay with him saying, yeah, there's this really advanced civilization. I'm going to kill everyone and steal their stuff. Okay, crazy. On the other hand, they're heathens. They're barbarians. They're killing their own people.
it's actually better if we invade and take them over so that we can stop this murder and instead teach them a proper religion and a proper culture. So it's a way of kind of rationalizing the invasion as much as anything. So what's that? Yep. It's pretty cool, isn't it? It is a calendar. Due to their understanding of the movement of the planets, they're actually able to interpret the movement of the days much actually better than really we were at the time. They have one of those accurate calendars ever devised. Again, it's cyclical. It moves us. You have your years, each year being after a animal or a creature in mythology. Months, days. So it all works kind of almost like a giant clock in a way. And then it resets. Whenever it gets to the very end, it begins a new year. So that's why I thought it was quite interesting when people were like, it says when it gets right here that the world is going to end. No. Begins again. You do know how a circle works, right? We drew this whenever we were 2. And this, of course, diagram shows human sacrifice. One of the things about blood in imagery and mythology is it often was a symbol for life. This is why, for instance, they had the idea if you get stabbed and you die because all this fluid runs out, you're losing all of your life, literally. So, blood was seen as very important symbolically. So that's why it's kind of all over the place. Although that picture was kind of interesting because the heart is kind of raising up to the heavens and the sacrifice looks a bit like it's a helium balloon. Like, you open the chest and it's like you're getting surgery and they gotta like hold stuff down with ties or else it's kind of like, whenever you have a balloon, you accidentally let it go in a building, you're like, somebody get the broom. Things like that. That would be ridiculous. So again, these are the 4 main reasons that the natives were able to lose despite having a numerical advantage. The fact that the Europeans had superior military technology, the natives were divided, there were diseases like smallpox that were just killing millions. Back, really like hundreds of thousands, but lots of people. And then the fear that all these things combined generated, and this belief that the world was coming to an end. That this was literally, and someone made the rather astute observation earlier that in a way it was the end of their world because what's going to happen is their whole livelihood is destroyed as the European imperial machine sets in and starts making them more like Europeans or forcing them to abandon their culture. You're going to basically have an end of their lifestyle. That's why there's such a big push nowadays to kind of reclaim some of these things that were lost. Another major change that's going to happen is actually biological, physiological. See, what happens is we have these Spanish moving into these colonies. And most of these guys moving in are going to be soldiers and sailors, in other words, men. And they're going to stay. So what happens? Well, they want to get married and have kids and what have you. They marry natives. And they have half children that are half European, half native, that are called mestizos. You also have the same thing happen with Europeans in Africa. They're called mulattoes. This creates a class structure. So at the very top you have Europeans. Next you have folks who are ethnically European, maybe folks who brought their wives from Europe and had children there, but they're not technically Europeans, they weren't born in Europe. Those are called Creoles. Then you've got mestizos, then you've got mulattoes, then you've got natives, and you've got Africans. This is kind of the way things go. Basically, it was based on how white you were. And they saw this is how the Europeans kind of rationalized things. They saw how white you were, is how smart you were. Have you guys ever heard of Charles Darwin? Okay, so he is this guy with the theory of evolution. This idea that eventually the things, the species that are most adept to change will survive. This is how you affect change. Say, like, you have your giraffes that have short necks, and there's a famine, and so there's not that much food, so the giraffes that have slightly longer necks due to just genetics, just what they happen to get, will survive because they can eat tough things and everything else dies off. They in turn have long neck children, and again, they're slightly better at it. So eventually their necks are so long that their heart can't support the blood flow and they die. So we have this perfect level, which actually is true. Why don't have crazy long, 38-foot tall giraffes. And this will keep things going in a specific way. The same thing applies in European minds to race. Why is it that the Europeans are successful and everyone else is not so much? Because being white is better. And so the civilizations that are most successful are the ones who are most white. This is called whitewashing, by the way. this is something that they apply to rationale why it's okay to slave people. You can see where this gets you into a very dangerous place as well, because think about Adolf Hitler. He says, Germans best. Everybody else just taking up space. So we're going to kill all them and take their stuff, equals more Germans, equals a better world. See how that kind of rationale goes in there? That's where social Darwinism is a big problem. Okie dokies. That's it for today. Talk more about colonization tomorrow. Oh, look at that timing.